Hi folks, HR Funk here. I have to admit to a bit of legerdemain with regard to the title of this video. If you're someone who has seen my previous videos, you know I'm a very pro-firearms person, very pro-Second Amendment. I chose the title of this video hoping to bring some people in that are not pro-firearm. I'm looking to speak to them a little bit about specifically the AR-15 rifle, and hopefully dispel maybe some myths, maybe make them a little bit more familiar with what exactly this item is. Now, this may do no good whatsoever, but I'm hoping maybe if I can help familiarize people with the design, maybe some of the anxiety surrounding it might dissipate just a little bit. I'll start this discussion by telling you I have been using the AR-15 in different variations since 1985. So I've had a 30-year relationship with this particular item, beginning back when I was in the United States Marine Corps and progressing all the way through my law enforcement career. I still use them for a variety of purposes today. I use them as a police officer. I use them as a tactical team member, specifically as a sniper. That was not my primary sniper weapon system, but I did use it in that capacity. I also use it as a match rifle. I use it for target shooting. So again, I have used this for many, many years. I've been to a great deal of training. I've conducted a great deal of training with regard to the AR-15 style rifle. And what I'm going to do in a moment is put a rifle in front of you, and I'm going to talk about some of the things that you see when you look at an AR-15. I really think there are some people who don't like AR-15s just because of the way they look. They don't look like Grandpa's squirrel rifle, or they don't look like Uncle Bob's shotgun that he uses to go rabbit hunting. It doesn't look like your neighbor's deer rifle that he uses when he goes out deer hunting. But what I'm hoping to show you is, even though it looks different, the different things you see on the firearm really make it very similar to any other firearm. It's just configured in such a way that it makes it look different. So with that little bit of an interview, let's take a look at the AR-15. Okay folks, here is the item itself. This is my Smith & Wesson M&P 15. It follows the basic design of the AR-15 platform. I should say right off the bat that it's a little bit of a misnomer to call this firearm an AR-15. The original AR-15, and by the way, AR stands for Armalite, Armalite rifle actually. Armalite was the company that developed the AR-15 back in the 1950s and originally marketed it. And when they marketed it to the military, it was marketed as a select fire weapon. Now, what does that mean? Select fire means that a select fire weapon, this is not a select fire weapon, but it means that the firearm with one pull of the trigger will fire multiple shots until you release the trigger. That's what's known as a fully automatic firearm. Select fire could also be a burst fire, meaning you pull the trigger and it fires a predetermined number of rounds automatically, usually 3 or 4 shots automatically. Then you release the trigger, squeeze it again, and it fires 3 or 4 more. So fully automatic, as long as you hold the trigger, it continues firing. Semi-automatic, burst fire means that it automatically fires 3 or 4 rounds, depending on the design of the firearm, with one pull of the trigger. This rifle, and truthfully this is a carbine because of its length. Carbine is a shortened version of a rifle. This is a semi-automatic firearm, as are most of the civilian-owned and many of the law enforcement used firearms, meaning you have to squeeze the trigger each and every time to fire a round. You cannot pull the trigger on this rifle, and most of the ones owned by civilians, and have it just continue firing on and on and on. That's something that the media does a very bad job of educating people about, largely because they don't know themselves. It is important to understand that distinction because, by definition, an assault rifle is a select fire weapon. When it does not have that select fire, that automatic fire capability, by definition it is not an assault rifle. Too many people look at this type of a firearm and in their mind it's an assault weapon. Now, to you folks out there who are gun owners and you perpetuate that notion and you call these things assault rifles and you tell your friends, ha ha ha, yeah, I got me a new assault rifle, you're not helping. You're helping perpetuate an erroneous notion about this firearm. Take the time to educate yourself and then educate other folks as to precisely what this is. That's what helps. That's what I'm trying to do with this video. So that's the first thing I'll tell you about this. It is not an assault rifle. It is a semi-automatic firearm. When we look at the different things on here, and again, so many people look at this and it just, to them, looks scary. First off, it's all black. Why is it all black? Well, I suppose the simplest reason to, or the simplest answer for that is because that's the color of the anodizing. And this, the rifle itself, the main components back here are made out of a particular type of aluminum. And that's just the color of anodizing they put on the aluminum. And they produce the rest of the features on the rifle to match that, essentially. So the fact that it's black, that it's a black rifle, I mean, I don't know, maybe people would feel better if it was blue or green or something like that. I have some of those. I have some that are different colors. But this one, at least for the moment, I have in the original black finish. Okay, let's look at the stock. This thing doesn't look anything like the stock that you see on Grandpa's squirrel rifle. Why does the stock look like this? The stock looks like this because it's capable of being adjusted for length. Now, why do you have to adjust it to different lengths? Well, the first reason is to get it to fit different size shooters. If you have people that are bigger with longer arms, you might need a longer stock to get the rifle to fit them correctly. If you have somebody that's smaller, you might need to shorten it a little bit. This stock has 6 positions that it goes into to give you some adjustability there. Also, if you have a police officer who's wearing heavy body armor, you might need to shorten this down just a little bit to get that rifle to fit when they have all that armor on, so that they're not trying to hold it way out here to shoot. So that's the reason the stock looks the way it does. No scarier than that. It's just made to adjust to fit the person that's shooting it. Okay, what's the next thing? Next thing, we look at it and we see over here there's this thing that flips down when we charge the rifle, when we get ready to shoot it. What's this thing? This is just a dust cover. All this does is keeps dust and debris and garbage from getting inside the rifle and causing it to malfunction. The piece that you can see moving back and forth inside is, it's the bolt carrier group. It's essentially the part of the rifle that reciprocates each time you squeeze the trigger, causes the fired casing to be extracted and ejected, and then loads a new fresh casing into the rifle's chamber, so the next time you pull the trigger it's going to fire again. Moving forward, this is a handguard. All this is for is if the rifle, the barrel, which is here, is inside of this. If it starts to get hot, you're not holding on to bare metal, burning your hand. And with the cartridge this fires, the 5.56 NATO cartridge, if you fire several of them, this barrel does start to heat up. So you need something to be able to hold on to when you're shooting so you don't burn your hand. What about this front sight? Boy, this looks weird. This thing that sticks up here in the front, don't like the way that looks at all. The reason this is like this is because in the original design, and up until the point that I put this optic sight on, there was a carry handle back here. You'll see some of the AR-15 rifles that have that carry handle. The rear sight is part of that carry handle, and it sets up high above the top of the rifle. The front sight needs to be raised the same amount so that when you aim using the sights, not using the optic sight that's on here now, but when you aim with the sights, you can fire an accurate shot. If you have the rear sight way up here and the front sight way down here, you're going to hit way high at any kind of distance with the rifle. So that's why this front sight, this is actually the front sight housing. Front sight is down inside. That's why it looks like that. Okay, how about this funny looking thing out here on the end? It's got these holes in it. What in the world is that thing? This is called, actually goes by a couple of different names, either flash hider or flash suppressor. What this is for is when you fire this, particularly in a low light situation, to try to break up the flash from the cartridge so it's not so bright. This helps the shooter, especially if you're not using an optic sight, if you have the standard sights on there, so you don't have this blinding fireball out there that ruins your night vision every time you fire a shot. Also, in a law enforcement or military application, it helps to keep from giving your position away, at least somewhat. On the newer ones, the bottom of the old style, the original style, like back when I was in the Marine Corps, had the holes all the way around it. The newer ones, the holes are not on the bottom, and what that does is helps to hold the muzzle down just a little bit when you're shooting, so you don't get quite so much muzzle flip in the recoil. This is not a real heavy recoiling rifle. It's a very user-friendly rifle as far as the recoil impulse is concerned, but to a degree that helps to stabilize it a little bit when you're shooting. All right, how about this crazy looking thing down here that I've got it standing on? What's that for? Well, this actually serves a couple of purposes. When the legs are up inside there, this is what's called a vertical foregrip. It gives you a different hand position when you're shooting to be able to hold the rifle. Now you can, and I have many, many times held the rifle here when I'm shooting. This just gives you another thing to hold on to. It's nothing more than a hand grip. When you extend the legs, it gives you a bipod. If I'm trying to shoot and steady the rifle, I can rest it on that. If I'm out somewhere shooting, I can now rest it on that and get a little bit steadier platform for a little bit more accurate shot. That's all the more that is. No more scary than that. I'm going to flip the rifle around for a minute and show you some of the things on this side. Oh, I forgot. There's a button down here. What in the world does this button do? Is that a self-destruct or is that a missile launcher or something? Nope. All that is a magazine release. This, many people call this a clip. This is actually called a magazine. When it's inside there, in order to release it, I push that button and that releases the magazine. That's all that is. Now I'll flip it around. When we look at this side of the rifle, we see a few more things. Right up here in the front, we see something that you don't see too often on squirrel rifles or whatever. We see a flashlight. Now, why does anybody have a flashlight on their rifle? This is actually a safety feature. This is if I'm using this firearm in a defensive application and I'm trying to properly identify my target, which is important. We definitely don't want to shoot anybody that shouldn't be shot. If it's a low light situation, that's what this is for, to help identify the target. Moving back, we see some other things back here. We see this little teeter-totter looking thing right here. All this is for is when I pull the bolt back, and you can't see it on that side, and I push the bottom of the little teeter-totter thing, that locks the bolt open. So if I flip it back this way, you can see there's nothing in here now. The bolt's locked to the rear. When I push the top half of that, it releases the bolt goes forward. If I was loading the firearm to shoot it, that would move around into the chamber. Since there's no magazine in there, nothing goes into the chamber, it's not going to fire right now. One other thing that I neglected to mention over here is this funny looking button back here. What's this thing do? This is called a forward bolt assist. And it was something that was added to the design of this rifle after they had encountered some problems with the early ones. What that does is if for some reason this bolt doesn't go all the way forward, first off, if it doesn't go all the way forward, the rifle will not fire. If it doesn't, there's no way to grab a hold of that thing and try to move it forward to get it to where it's supposed to go. So this button gives you something to push, and there's a ratchet hand in there that engages the side of the bolt and pushes it forward so that you can then fire the rifle. That's what the little button's for over here. Now I'll flip it back around. How about this thing? This little lever on the side, what's that do? On semi-automatic firearms, like this one right here, this is just the safety. When the safety is in the forward position, it's in the safe position, and when you flip it up, it's in the fire position. That's all that little lever is. Again, I mentioned the optic sight a while ago. This has a rail. You can't see it very well on the top. I removed that handguard that I was talking about a while ago that had the rear sight in it to expose this rail, and I was able to use that to mount this optic sight. Now, why do I put an optic sight on a rifle like this? Same reason you put an optic sight on any other kind of rifle, to help fire a more accurate shot, particularly a more accurate shot at longer distances. Let's talk just for a minute about the cartridge this carbine fires. It's chambered for the 5.56 NATO cartridge. In layman's terms, that's a .22 caliber bullet, or it's actually 0.224 inches in diameter. And it fires that bullet out of a barrel this length at about 2,800 to 3,000 feet per second. Some people talk about the AR-15 being an extremely powerful military firearm. Folks, I'll tell you, the military has been complaining about the lack of power of these type of firearms for 50 years now. And they've done many things during that time period to try to improve the effectiveness of that cartridge. As rifle cartridges go, this is not one of the more powerful cartridges. Truthfully, I think the 5.56 NATO makes a better law enforcement cartridge than it does a military cartridge, because law enforcement engagement distances tend to be much less than military engagement distances. This cartridge works much better at closer range than it does at greater ranges. So what I'm going to do in a minute is bring another firearm up here that will look a little bit more, what I'll say, as conventional, and just compare some of the things that I've talked about with the AR-15 and some of the things on that more conventional rifle. Okay, now I put my more conventional rifle on the table along with my AR, or actually my M&P 15. This one tends to look a lot more like what people think of as a traditional hunting or sporting rifle. How is it different from the AR-15? Well, let's see. The AR-15, or the rifle that I have here, the one that most civilians own, is a semi-automatic firearm. This one is a semi-automatic firearm. Neither one of these is an assault weapon, assault rifle. This one uses a detachable magazine that can be loaded and inserted into the rifle. This one uses a detachable magazine that is loaded and inserted into the rifle. This one fires one shot each time you pull the trigger. This one fires one shot each time you pull the trigger. This one has both an optical sighting system and a mechanical sighting system. This one has both an optical sighting system and a mechanical sighting system, although the rear sight has been removed from this one. This one has a fixed stock that's not adjustable unless you replace the stock. There's a difference. This one has a stock that can be adjusted to fit the shooter. That's actually a benefit for the AR-15 when it comes to adapting it to different persons. This one has a flashlight attached to it. This one doesn't have, at least in its current configuration, any way to attach a flashlight to it. As I said before, the flashlight really is a safety item. It's to help make sure you have proper target identification. This one doesn't have that. This one has the forward grip that doubles as a bipod to help steady it to fire a more accurate shot. This one does not. It's harder to fire a more accurate shot with this particular rifle because it doesn't have this feature. This one has a flash hider to help keep down the flash from the shooter so it doesn't disturb your night vision, and also for a law enforcement officer doesn't give away your position. This one does not have that. However, this one, in the interest of full disclosure, fires a .22 rimfire cartridge, which doesn't have much flash in the first place. Really, a flash suppressor or a flash hider on this rifle would be pretty superfluous. And I hope you can see from this comparison, there's just not that much difference. I mean, these rifles, the AR-15 has some features. This is about a $180 rifle. This is about a $850 rifle. So you would expect that it's going to have a few more features on than this more basic rifle does. But I hope you can see through this comparison that they're pretty similar. to condemn this rifle and say this one is acceptable, it's kind of silly. Now, if you're the type of person who just doesn't like any firearms, you don't think people should own any of this or anything else, then I'm probably not doing anything to help change your opinion. But maybe, even for you, you've learned a little bit more about this rifle system and understand more what it is you're looking at. So from that perspective, if I've helped increase your knowledge at all, I feel like I've accomplished something. So there you have it, folks. That's the AR-15 in a nutshell. Hopefully you got some information in this that you can use and maybe help make a little bit more informed decision. I will tell you at this point we are about a week out from the San Bernardino massacre, and I must say my heart goes out to the people who were killed, and especially their families who are still around and are grieving their lost loved ones. It is a tragedy, an unspeakable tragedy, but it's not a result of an inanimate firearm. It's a result of radicalized jihadis that decided to kill Americans really for no other reason than the fact that they are Americans. There are a lot of good guys, a lot of people like myself, a lot of law enforcement officers, a lot of civilians who are good, responsible firearms owners that are not the problem. In fact, we're trying to help the situation, and we recognize that in order to combat the people who would kill innocent Americans, we have to have the tools necessary to be able to defeat those people. One of those is the AR-15. So again, I hope you got something from this. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. And until next time, good shooting. Bye-bye.